my background is really unusual, and I'm just going to throw out what I've done in the past and kind of go over a course outline about things that I think are probably important to this group, what I understand about this group, and from what I know. And I'd be really open to any specific questions you have. I'm currently working for Midcoast Mental Health Center, and I've been working there for the last year. Pretty much as a full-time employee, but basically I've been developing programs, housing programs for people with chronic mental illness. My position right now is kind of paid through Bureau of Mental Health, and I've kind of worked as like a resource developer for an agency. My background beyond that is really different. I used to work for a model cities agency in the city of Portland back in the late 1970s called the MICA Housing Corporation that did housing rehabilitation. And I also worked for a community action agency called Community Concepts, where I was the housing director. And I wrote a series of proposals, one of which was one of 20 funded in the entire country for a rural housing self-help program back in 1982, 1983. And that program was just really a long shot. I just kind of hit the pay dirt with this thing. And my career as a social service administrator has been defined by that little proposal I wrote. So I've been writing grants as a housing director for a community action agency. I've worked on setting up a contract with Central Maine Power Company for the Bundle Up program. They used to have a program that would bundle up water heaters. I've written a number of very competitive grants around subsidized housing programs, like what the Maine State Housing Authority does, for those types of things. I also work for PROP, the Community Action Agency in Cumberland County, and Karen Evans is here. She was on the board there. Community action agencies are really the anti-poverty organizations that network the state, and a lot of the really innovative things that have happened on behalf of low-income housing have really happened through these agencies. They're a key part of the social service network. I worked at PROP for approximately 4 years as a development director, developing a whole bunch of different types of programs, and also joined their annual fund. In 1987, I dealt with a family tragedy where my first wife developed a very serious illness, and I suddenly became a single parent. And I left PROP, and I pretty much had an early midlife crisis. Decided I wanted to become a consultant because it was the type of job that would be really flexible. And I activated a real estate license I had and went to work for my uncle selling real estate in addition to consulting. And through the real estate sales stuff that I did, I hooked up with a national real estate company as a management consultant, and I was traveling all over England helping work in the real estate industry. So I know a lot about real estate from that background. In addition to that, I've worked with a number of organizations, either teaching grant writing or actually writing grants. And I'm kind of a contract trainer for the Department of Human Services on grant writing. I did a workshop last Wednesday to a group of people from the state, and I've taught grant writing at the University of Southern Maine and Westbrook College, and a lot of different groups. So grant writing is kind of my expertise. I know a lot about real estate, and I know a lot about low-income housing. Last week, the housing program that I was working on was recognized by the, it was not through a nomination through one of the members here, but the Commissioner's Advisory Council recognized different programs or different people, and I received an award through that. It's really funny. That award has probably meant as much to me as anything I've received in my professional career. It really does mean a lot to me. And I want to briefly say that it's such a great idea, whoever came up with that idea, putting those awards out, because I'm somebody that is kind of in the system, the mental health system, but I'm really not that totally involved the way some people are, because I have different things that I do work on. But it's a perfect way for you to really find as many supporters across the state is by recognizing a lot of people and trying to bring them into the system. I think a lot of people need that little push to really, really become even more concerned, and you can get a lot more energy directed to your cause by doing that type of thing. And I'd urge this group to try and set up something like that. So that was a great idea. I don't know, Karen Evans, you're involved with that. somehow, I take it, because you were handing the things out.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was a great idea, and I think a lot of the people were there. I think they received tremendous results from the people that were recognized.
It came out of the Commissioner's Advisory Task Force, and it basically came out of a goal of wanting to honor people
I think it
have
is.
supported
Yeah.
consumers, and it was solely selected by consumers. Congratulations.
Well, no, I mean, I'm serious. I hate to bring something up that in honor, because usually I'm fairly self-deprecating, but that one really did mean a lot to me. And the reason I also mentioned it is it's a great idea, because you're bringing in more people.
We're planning a
Yeah.
bigger year
Next year, more people bringing in. In addition to that, I've been working with a consumer group in Portland, the Center for the Support and Education of MPD. I've been working as a consultant for that group.
That's what I know your name. You work with Stacy.
Yeah, okay.
I'm like, good God, I know you guys.
I worked with a lady named Stacy Clark, who's a very active, very visible person. So that's kind of what my background is. It's all over the place, but I think it's really, I do have a lot I can offer in terms of advice. Mid-Coast Mental Health Center, I'm being paid by that agency today to come over here and do this workshop. And, that agency really strongly believes in the consumer movement. It's such a key part of what we're trying to do. We're also working with a consumer group, mental health, what's it called? What's the name of the group, Don?
Consumer Advocacy.
And they're recently incorporated. I've been kind of working with that group on and off. I've also been working with, helping to develop a drop-in center in Belfast, working with a group of consumers up there. And it's not an easy time to develop new programs, but there's a tremendous need in terms of social activities in Belfast.
I happen to know there's a new group that had a start and kind of closed down right now, and it's interested in getting a restart. It's called Survivors. I'm not too sure of it. In regards to how could they possibly tap into your services with grant writing, or is that a possibility?
Oh yeah, no,
I know you're the best in grant writing, so.
No, I can't say that. But,
oh, that's not what I heard. I heard boards go after you, like.
Basically, I say I'm working pretty much full-time for a mental health agency right now. I pick up contracts on the side. And I have no plan to be where I am for very much longer. I just kind of do one of these lifestyle that I've had for a number of years.
So you do freelancing on the grant writing end.
What's hard? Yeah, actually, I didn't feel comfortable bringing that. But yeah, I didn't really, because they're paying me to be here. I feel bad. Pushing my services elsewhere.
Conflict of interest.
Yeah, conflict of interest. So that's basically what I'm all about. I'd be glad to answer any questions. I have a workbook here of different materials that I think would be of help to you folks around housing and development and grant writing and some of the techniques that I use. As intern, this intern program, I think grant writing is probably one of the most important skills that you become aware of. There's a lot of intimidation in grant writing. There's a lot of different things that you can do to make your life a lot easier in terms of your grant writing and your program development. And over that package. I've also got something called a style delineator, resort style delineator, which is a fun little thing that I really don't think we have time to today unless you get really bored. But it's this thing here, and it's a self-assessment tool. I've used it with Don before, and I think it was very revealing, wasn't Don, the results in terms of what the group dynamics were and why a group can work and why it can't. It's a fairly easy little test to take, and the directions are right there. So at some point, you folks might want to consider using that thing at one of your future meetings. It would probably take you about a half an hour to get through. Not half an hour, probably 15 or 20 minutes. Dawn's been through it, so Dawn could even show you how to do it. Carol said. It's fun. Yeah, so next one of your future meetings, just take 20 minutes to half an hour aside and try to do this little workshop. Don't do it now. And Dawn's been through it, and I'm sure he has a lot of insights, and I have some additional instructions I could give him to do it. Throwing that out to you folks. And it's a team building exercise.
Personal life as well.
Yeah. It's a team building exercise, and you can see how different personality styles, how you have to work together, and how synergy is such a key part of what you do. So I throw that out to you. I've also threw a little bit of stuff here about developing boards, but it's basically a workshop on the page thing here. Is a good part of the course that I teach through the Department of Human Services. So where would you like to go, folks? I'm the answer man. Any questions at all?
I've got a question, sir.
Okay.
My name's John Garman.
Hi, John.
And I've been wondering about environmental housing problems, especially in HUD, in the area of affordable housing for the low income.
Yeah. When you say environmental, you mean our environmental pollution, that type of thing, or?
Well, I'm speaking in terms of the spirit of tranquility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know that the federal government has no security or no warranty to domestic tranquility, just housing in the area of regulatory housing.
Okay.
But I'm wondering what my concerns are in environmental, because I found out that a lot of our low-income people live with the beast, you know, explicitly, you know, and I think the federal government has knowledge of what I'm talking about, pertaining to the spirit of America, which is a very degraded.
So it's kind of unsafe housing is what you're talking about, basically.
Well, it causes, I'm saying that it leads to mental illnesses, because individuals live in environments where they're not very productive anyway. It seems to be that the studies that the federal government do make them more dysfunctional, which leads to addictions and which causes people to become mentally ill.
Okay, you know, in response to that, people with chronic mental illness supposedly do better with as many community supports as possible built around where they're living. And I think that's what you really got to do, is create as many artificial supports. Some are real, some aren't, and just having a support system. And I think that's one of the problems with the way a lot of the HUD housing is.
I don't understand the artificial.
Well, artificial, let's say you set up a home sharing situation within, I mean, I'm going to get into it in terms of what people can afford.
Yes.
Home sharing is an alternative in order to get an income up higher in order to buy a property. A home sharing situation in some ways is artificial. It's not a regular family. It's kind of two people kind of brought together trying to match up as well as they can. But to me, it's kind of set up artificially. And it can be just as useful and as good a support system as what a family would be. It would be as good as what a, just friends and things like that. I mean, it seems like that could work. That's an alternative.
This is cohabit multi-purpose housing such as Shalom has.
Another thing you could work on would be the idea of cooperatives. Or, and that's kind of a big movement right now, is where cooperatives is because it's affordable housing. And in some ways, a cooperative is a legal organization. That's kind of an artificial support right there, but it's definitely you're part of something.
Multi-purpose housing.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
That community, I believe it was you that mentioned a year or so ago, where they had built small houses around in one central. And that sounded good, where they set up their own rules, their own.
Let me tell you about the housing programs that I'm developing right now, and try to say some things that I think relate to what you're talking about. This program for Mid-Coast Mental Health Center, we've taken a bunch of houses that we rent long-term from the federal government under the HUD foreclosed, it's HUD Acquired Properties Program. And they're properties owned by the federal government that have been foreclosed on. The government's kind of stuck with them. We set up long-term leasing arrangements for $1 a year to rent these houses. We have to rehabilitate them a little bit. They've been fairly inexpensive to do. They've been probably $3,000 to $5,000 per house. And we turn this as the mental health agency. Then we turn around and rent them out to mental health consumers under a home sharing type of agreement. That they're going to have to share the housing with somebody else. The main reason, because we need the incomes in order to support the cost of the properties. When I say we rent it for $1 a year, we still have to pay the taxes. We have to pay the heat. Well, we pay the utilities. We pay the insurance as well, and that equals averages around $300 a month for each house that we're doing. So we need 30% of 2 SSI incomes, which equal around $300 or a Social Security disability. And that's how we can support a program long-term based on that. We've had some support from BMH, Bureau of Mental Health, has given us the monies to rehabilitate the places, but we could still run that same type of thing and borrow the money on a long-term type of deal to do that same type of program.
You don't, now, as far as I understand, there's a large number of people looking for housing. I don't know if that's true anymore.
Yeah, no, it's always true.
And the waiting list is like 2 years long and stuff like that. And,
yeah.
You know, so what you're focusing on is just a mental health kind of thing.
Well, actually, the HUD program we have to dedicate towards people at homeless or at risk of homelessness.
Okay.
The HUD definitions are gray enough right now that we can get pretty much everybody into it, I think. But the way it's worked is most of the people have been at some sort of shelter or, you know, really at risk of homelessness that we put them into the houses. And you know, it's an unusual program. Some of the problems we're having is that some of the houses are really too small for 2 people, the bedroom size. And I think people talk about a support thing that it becomes too tight. You know what I'm saying?
You can't
It's dangerous.
You know, what you're doing is a great thing.
Yeah.
What you're doing is, I really feel it.
Yeah.
You know?
This is a program that we've set up without any government money at all, other than helping HUD out with these properties, and BMH has given us some money for the, like, really it's more than the stoves and refrigerators and stuff. We get volunteer labor to do a lot of the work. Probably about half the stuff is cosmetic that has to be done, and that's painting and paper and things like that. You get volunteers to do that pretty easily. And it's funny, we probably have more volunteers than we have places that need to be done at this point. So that's one of the programs. We currently have 4 houses, and we're negotiating for 2 others. One of the houses is a duplex, and each of those places will have 2 to 3 people.
Is it age requirement or is
No,
it selected?
no. This is. But the problem with this is that we're getting into some real funny areas about who we put into places, and we try to keep the thing as open as possible. You know, I mean, this is the way we're trying to do it, and I know our licensing, because it's a new program, that we're going to have to come up with a better waiting list and all that stuff. But we're really just trying to help out as much as possible.
First come, first served.
Yeah, like the consumer group, the mental health, the advisory group that Dawn's with, we'd like to try to give them one of the houses, and they could provide the respite, and it would be kind of a scheduled type of thing. I mean, this is what we're talking about right now, and I think we have enough flexibility to do something like that. But if we start doing that, then we're start dealing with even weirder waiting lists. That's in terms of program development. That's one of the real funny things sometimes. Sometimes you want the rules as loose as possible. Other times you want them fairly tight. And that's the way it's working out right now. Sure.
Why has that not come to Portland? Is it just because you're with Mid-Coast?
Yeah, no, one of the factors is...
Mid-Coast area, or...?
No, there are certain parts of the state that this could really work well, like Aroostook County with some of the air bases shutting down, the housing up there. Bangor is some possibilities. And Bangor actually does have 1 house off the ground right now. But it depends on where the properties are. Rockland's kind of unique in that I think the way I read it is that a bunch of banks had some people that foreclosed on their properties at the same time as the banks went belly up. A lot of those the inventories at some of these banks that went belly up, the inventory would be sold to existing banks, but these properties are so marginal that a lot of the other banks have picked them up, and I think they've just kind of been out there. And most of them have been unoccupied for about 2 years. Rockland, as we kind of joke about, we're very fortunate to have these properties, but it's really a bad sign in terms of what the local market, real estate market's all about.
But what you're saying, Jack, I think if I just understand this real quick, it's not a matter of funding, of dollars to do something in Portland. It's a matter of housing resources, physical building or something.
Right. There are some they're in Portland, and I've seen the list. There are probably currently about 100 properties across the state that can be picked up this way. You have to get your agency certified as a special HUD certification for pre-approval. You have to go through an application process. It takes time. And then after that, we basically have to, whenever we hear about these properties, what I do, I contract out an inspection, a third-party inspector to go through the property. I pay for that. And I get an idea of how much it's going to cost to get it rehabilitated. And then we just... you know, the properties are out there. There are probably 2 or 3 others that I could have gone after that I passed on, that I didn't feel they were worth it.
Why does this have grant, why can't now, are you talking about FHA housing or farmers' homes?
It's actually, one of the houses is a farmer's home house, and the rest are HUD. Actually.
Why can't an individual
Well,
do this?
the way this was set up through some of the legislation that happened through HUD, that when we talk about CHODOs, I don't know if anybody's talking about CHODOs, but it's a certain type of designation as a housing development organization that you are given special treatment or special preference in terms of tapping into government monies, mainly because the private sector, the regular developers, are the ones that have probably done more of their share. So they've kind of set aside for these types of organizations. And I think that's why we have that opportunity to do that, what the legislation, the national legislation was all about.
But I couldn't do this on my own.
You could possibly buy a house, but you would be really competing in the open market pretty much. Let's say you were eligible through Farmer's Home, you might have a better shot at getting some of the properties. But you should have there are other buys out there that you can go after. These houses aren't the best buys. I mean, you're talking about, well, in the real estate industry, there are three things they always talk about. What the value of the house? Location, location, and location. The last one we picked up is probably about a mile from a dump, the municipal dump. Well, no, less than that. So you're dealing with issues around that, but that's the only property you can afford. One of the things that I'm aware of is the stigma in terms of a mental health agency buying a place near a dump. But let me tell you one other thing, though. I live in Portland. My house is really close to a highway, and there are certain reasons why I wanted to be in that neighborhood. In order to buy a house, I was willing to personally give up the location in order to get what I wanted. There are a lot of, that's the way you have to look at it. I'm just in defense of what I'm saying.
They're not isolating them, though.
No.
The stores, it's because they probably wouldn't be able to afford transportation.
Actually, that place is a little isolated, but that's what we were looking for because we wanted to give people an opportunity to get out of the city because that's another. And we have some people that have cars, and we'd really try to get them in there to do that.
And coastal trans.
Yeah, there's transportation programs and stuff like that. And, I mean, a lot of people prefer to be out a little ways out in the country.
I'd like to refer to a quick question.
Sure. Yeah.
And that is that the biggest thing that he's got going is he's on competitiveness is that he's tax exempt, that program, whereas you wouldn't have that kind of.
The system is set up to help nonprofits in a lot of ways. Certain resources are automatically directed towards nonprofits, and I mean, it's our purpose as an organization working together. That's part of what an organization is all about. Is that it's easier to do it than as an individual.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I missed the beginning of this.
Yeah.
I take it you're from
Council planning. I live in Portland also.
Yeah. Okay.
And I also live in a multi-purpose housing complex for the elderly, the handicapped, and the mentally ill.
Yeah.
And there's zoning issues. I've been to a few.
Yeah, zoning's really hot in Portland.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I'll give you more thoughts about how I feel about that. Go ahead.
I'd like to, knowing a little bit about one of the groups' houses that you have for their benefit. I know them personally. And on paper, it would sound really weird and it wouldn't work. It's a guy and a girl in a small house. And it's just like you have to set up, inside work, outside work. It's just like, but it works. On paper, it shouldn't work. But those two people are making out really, really well in Jack's house, and each one on SSI, and each one of them probably through this networking that you have, the same kind of problems coming up with people living together. And they're probably better off.
What's funny, this is the best place that these people are going to live in, really. I mean, realistically, I hate to say that. I mean, you could live in an apartment building or something like that, but this is really only an opportunity to live out in the community, in a house, pretty much, and we can support it income-wise without any really government assistance.
Are we talking throughout the state? Do you represent throughout the state?
No, this thing here, I've really talked it up. I mean, obviously, it's something I think could work.
Yeah.
There are potentially, I said, over 100 houses I would expect statewide, numbers-wise, that I've seen. And if you could latch on to, let's say, 20 of those houses statewide, that would be quite a program to pull off. And it said that geographically, there are a bunch of, in Aroostook County, there's some in western Maine, I've noticed. like Livermore Falls. There's some up in the Loring, and then there would be some down near the Berwicks and Kittery in that area that has lost because of the military and the market, really, the real estate market being really bad there. There are a few in Portland, but I mean, the thing is, I don't think anybody's really looked at this at all as a possible way to do it, and it's kind of natural.
I would think there'd be many in Lewiston.
Yeah.
The whole street, the whole block there.
Yeah. I'll tell you, if you have any ideas about that stuff, that Community Action Agency, Community Concepts is great in terms of developing things, programs. If you have specific ideas, if there's a Community Action Agency that can figure it out for you, it's that group right there. Great agency.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's it. I'll move on. That's one of the programs that I'm working on right now, and we expect to expand that, as we go along. The other program that we developed is we call it Partners in Community Living, and it's a Medicaid program that we have. We get some funding from BMH, and we're taking people with, let's say, severe chronic mental illness and setting them up in scattered site residential situations where they're living with a care provider full time. And we're setting these up. We currently have, I think, 6 right now. We should have probably 10 over the next 3 months. And
What's the name of the program?
Partners in Community Living. I have a brochure that accidentally. This is the program right here, and this is the mental health agency I'm working for. I'll pass this around. This is the Midcoast Mental Health Center stuff. This program, what we're doing, we're setting up really basically home sharing situations, and the mental health care, the client pays usually around 50% of their income towards the housing cost, and they're living with a care provider in the care provider's house. The care provider meets certain certifications through my agency and inspections and licensing requirements. That person provides personal care and rehab services as a part of the Medicaid program. And we're taking people directly out of AMHI and placing them in this program. We've had 4 placements so far. It's really an unusual program. It's the first of its type in the state, approved as a PNMI, which is a private non-medical institution designation, and access issue to Medicaid funds. We currently have a placement on Monhegan Island. Even I mean, we're doing some really unusual things with this program.
Some of the other locations. I have
No, this is basically up in Rockland area. It can be Knoxville, Waldo County, a small part of Lincoln. We'll do placements in in that catchment area. We could probably arrange to do this program outside our catchment area, but we'd have to get some special permissions from probably the Bureau and the agency that's in that area. But we could arrange some others around that. The program requires a lot of, it's a real match system. When we're talking about like home sharing situations, this program, you have to have a big pool of care providers, you have to have a big pool of clients, and you have to really carefully match situations. One of our placements has been going on since February for the same people. Another, let's see, 2 others probably since May, April, and the others kind of drop in and drop out short term. It's kind of a unusual program, the first of its type. In some senses, it's almost like a scattered site group home. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but it's very, it's scattered, totally integrated in the community. It seems to be working for some people really well. We're really satisfied with them. Again,
if it was someone like, I'm thinking of somebody that I know that has been in AMHI for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And with the downside of being AMHI, the family members are real concerned. They've tried several experiences with group homes, and basically totally don't even look at that as a possibility.
This is definitely an alternative to the whole thing. That's what I mean. That's where we really kind of fit in.
So you'd have a rotating. I think part of the concern that I heard from the parent in this situation was the fact that one individual ran the house and that the supervision was not there. This would be a group of providers that would come in, and so that no one goes on a burnout. And the
respite is, excuse me, I should explain more about it. It's in the brochure that we provide respite We also provide, it's like a support system. They come in once a week, the care providers. We supply them with training, and also it's like they meet with a clinical supervisor to talk about how to work with. Each of the people is also assigned a case manager through the intensive case management or community support section of the program. What's kind of unusual about it, though, it's not a 24 around the clock, different shifts type of deal. It's the 24-hour know the whereabouts, and like some of the time, some of the clients will be like in the day programs, or might even be out doing different functions.
Sounds
We
great.
have a couple of people that come through our club as partners.
Really?
The partners program.
Good. This sounds just exactly what I'm needing for one of my people.
This is these Medicaid funds.
Mm-hmm.
They could be accessed in another area, right? Other than Rockland, like.
Yeah,
Let's be really weird about it. Live in Ohio. No reason why you couldn't access.
Yeah, there is, and I would have to get the board of directors of the agency to, if you're talking about through my agency in my program.
I'm saying if say let's like prop.
Yeah.
Let's say if prop wanted to get something like that online.
Yeah.
There's no reason why they couldn't do a proposal
Right.
back to Medicaid.
Right. To do that.
Yes.
This is private houses.
Yeah, and what's really unusual about this is how the system is kind of, this is how this fits in. I mean, I'm always taking the housing perspective. I mean, I'm sure the clinical stuff and the rehab and personal care is great, but people are living in really safe and affordable housing, very economically, out in the community. It's the best place these people are going to live. These houses generally are better than the ones that I was talking about in my other program, the situation that people are living in. So we're taking Medicaid funds. By paying the care provider, in effect, we're raising the, we're paying.
We're to manipulate the system.
Yeah,
right?
we're paying the residential cost indirectly.
Yeah.
And that's what Medicaid does not allow you to do, is you have to find a way to come up with the residential cost. It's kind of borderline. At some point, it might be kind of tightened up a little bit. But the way Medicaid is right now, everybody's got to be pushing the program as far as it can go. There's a real opportunity right now, and try to. I mean, this reflects what's really needed, I think, more than some other programs that will be funded through Medicaid.
Especially if the person is needing, I'm for independence as much as you can go, but there are some people, and you just have to be honest, that are always going to need some caretaking,
right.
Based on the fact that they've lived with their disability for 20 years and have been institutionalized and all like this. And so if they could have the independence that this would guarantee them, plus the supervision that is needed for their care, I think it's ideal.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I'm going, yeah.
You can't still live on it.
I just not heard of it.
You're telling him his own program.
Yeah. I think
buy
it's
it.
great. I don't know why I haven't heard of it, but I haven't. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, there were a group of agencies that tried to start this together, and everybody else fell by the wayside pretty much. And, we just felt it was well alternative.
So in other words, it's real important to get this off the ground, to get some real good success stories right off the ground.
That's a really important thing, and that's a key belief of mine. And get any program going, you don't want the worst cases. You want to get going and run through the, take care of all the problems you're going to have through some easier cases. And we're talking about working with. I mean, you folks know you're mental health consumers. That sometimes some people are really high functioning. Sometimes they're not. Some people are all at different levels, and we got to get a system that is flexible enough to deal with all those different variables. And that's what we're really doing. And a lot of we really realize. I mean, everybody in the business does pretty much, but it's almost like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. There's a lot of success and there's a lot of failures, but you just got to keep on going in a positive direction, and that's the only way you're going to make a difference.
But how many people? I'm sorry. I'm so curious about this.
Yeah.
How many people do they usually send this one home setting?
One to one.
It's 1 to 1.
Yeah, and we pay the care providers low 20s, around 20,000 is the way it works out on an annual basis. What's funny is that we built respite into the thing, but we kind of set it up that the respite people, the care provider loses the amount on the respite. So the care providers are finding their own respite kind of indirectly and working with the families and setting up all these indirect types of things, which are better community supports, if you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So we're kind of throwing it,
support
using natural support.
Artificial support in place.
The other thing too is we're also trying to develop a children's residential program, and this program actually is very similar to when you hear about therapeutic foster homes, that type of idea, but it's more for adults, and I mean it is for adults, but the children's stuff has been out there. We're just taking that same thing a step further.
I have a question. I don't know.
Sure.
This is kind of far-reaching. Okay, I'm working with a woman that's in her later 70s. And she has a daughter. She has a house, and I just hear her trauma every time she goes to visit this individual up at Amheim. She owns her own property. Now, if she were to will that property to her daughter...
Yeah, she could trust it somehow.
If she could keep it in the daughter's name, but they could have a person that lives in this house that would provide services, because she knows the outcome, because Amheim is already pushing toward... that we're downsizing and we're looking at communities, systems out there for you and all like that.
One of the tricky things you just brought up was like family members helping other family members. Just so like I was saying that nonprofits get a special incentive. I think there's a special disincentive to sometimes families getting involved the way the system's set up. Because agencies don't get these funny little conflicts in terms of, it's not nepotism, but it's, you understand what I'm saying? But I think there are ways you could structure that somehow that would be fairly clear. Right now, I'm looking at a property in Rockland. I'm working with a lady that there's another house on the market beside her. She's thinking of trying to set it up somehow that she would buy that property and put her son in there who's chronically mentally ill, and somehow set up for life. And she's also a CNA. That she thinks that she can provide some assistance to him as well as somebody else in there, and how can we tie into the resource. So I mean, there are ways you could do it, but you're really stretching yourself, but you can do it. I think the possibilities are there. Another thing is a lease for life type of deal. We get an agency that there's monies out there. There are different ways you can play around with this and be fairly creative to work it around individuals' tenancy for life is what I'm thinking of. That the somebody would will it to an agency and would receive some sort of money for it, but would always live in that house or have a certain part of it always dedicated to what they wanted. There are ways you could work it out, I think, if you found an agency that's pretty flexible and willing to do things. So those are two of the programs we're working on right now. The third thing that we're working on, it's out of my hands now, and it's with the advocacy group that Dawn's with, is that we wrote a proposal to the Maine Realtors Foundation to set up a revolving loan fund for housing expenses that would be consumer run. And we've got a monies, and the consumer group is actually going to administer that thing, that loan program, realizing that one of the major problems for a lot of people on really limited incomes, they have no credit at all. They have no ability to borrow money. Let's say you want to buy an appliance or you need expenses or anything housing related. The consumer group has gone ahead and they've applied for additional monies. Has Dawn ever talked about this at all? I mean, it's pretty amazing what this group has done. But they've applied for other monies through the Maine Community Loan Fund. They've just granted, I think, $6,000 extra to set up and to add that to their revolving loan pool. And
are there any options from the federal government, such as a community take charge program?
I'm not familiar with that.
Well, I know in rehabilitated services, whether it be chemical or alcohol addiction, the mental health field, that seems to be the consent decree.
Yeah.
To me, that causes a lot of state dominion, so to speak.
Yeah.
Moderate distribution, such as $6,000.
Yeah.
But the federal government, which has a warning to the people, which I think we shouldn't allow the federal government to breach its warning, to preserve, to protect, and to defend. That's what the federal government has always been. That's what our military stands for. The point I'm trying to make is that community participation has always been structured and has always been supported by the federal government.
Yeah.
The deregulation of governmental reformation and the socialization of what Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher's parliamentary duty brought, in my mind, is 215 years of getting government off the backs, but getting government to participate in where the lack and the slack is, and maintaining domestic tranquility.
But, you know, something that's kind of happened here, it's kind of these consumer movements that are happening. And you folks are what's hot right now, mental health consumers. I think you folks have opportunities to access a lot of resources. But going back through history, not history, but I mean just recent history, community action agencies were really doing a lot of advocacy around low-income issues. Before that, or right around the same time, there's a lot of stuff around neighborhoods,
yes.
Empowering neighborhoods.
Community take charge program.
Right. You kind of folks are the next stage here with this whole thing. Part of this, to me, is the talk about my background with PROP, the Community Action Agency.
Yes.
I was always the low-income advocate. Kind of the way the low-income system's fallen apart, the safety net is no longer there. The safety net has kind of fallen back to the mental health consumers, and I think now there's kind of an empowerment in this whole group here. And I think you folks are what hot. You really have some opportunities to do some unbelievable things right now.
But this is this is basically what I'm reflecting on too. You know, the fact that consumer participation warrants the government's distribution, and no isolation of any social ill, whether it be mental illness, homelessness, chemical dependency, or alcohol. They're all interacted together. So I was hoping that, you know, there would be a means and a ways in any state to have a unified coalition. We do have coalition. I'm confused.
No, you've got a really good point there. Here I'm working at a mental health agency, working as like a consumer advocate pretty much. Sometimes the tie isn't that natural with a mental health agency for me to be doing what I'm doing. There's the BMR population that you have Department of Mental Health and Department of, I can't even get it straight anymore, PMH and BMR coming together.
Bureau of Mental
retardation. I mean, all these different groupings, special needs populations, everybody's kind of coming together here. It's really hard to get a consensus with those groups. I mean, they're so different sometimes. Mental health agencies, their backgrounds are obviously clinical mental health. I mean, but within those agencies, you're finding a real battle between the psychiatric and the psychologists and the social workers. Now you've got the consumer advocates in the whole picture. Everybody seems to be going off in a little different direction, trying to protect turf, and you know, there's a lot of changes happening.
That's
not that thing.
The consent decree. Consent decree. Yeah, I don't like the casting and the procrastination that goes on in this artificial Band-Aid. You know, this Band-Aid is not very covered. It don't cover anything.
I hope this is it. I mean, I've got some great lives, but
let's get in a house.
Yeah, no, let's get it in. It's really funny. One of the things, I mean, I'm working at a mental health agency. There's a real cult of social work around the whole agency. Creativity is really important in terms of developing new programs, coming with new ideas. There has been research done on the college campuses measuring which college major is the least creative according to the standard creativity test. Guess what the least creative major in major universities is? Social work. Of all the different majors that people go into in terms of...
creating what?
No, they measured the students in the social work programs. They were the least creative of all the majors.
In what area of creativity?
It's the Torrance School of...
I'm saying what?
Excuse me, a Torrance test. It's a standardized creativity test.
Is this a federal government study?
No, it was a major university did this.
Oh, it did on its own. On its own.
I mean, college students are the most studied people there are. What's even funnier about it wasn't only just social workers were the least creative, but over time, the longer they were in the program, their scores even went down.
But when you say creative, see, we celebrate a creative spirit, but we have cultural diversity. I think it's a stinking guilt trip for somebody to sit. It's just like the standard achievement test.
It's just creativity. It's more of an artistic.
Set and the divider.
Yeah, the ability to think.
You know about 512?
Do that.
Excuse me?
501 or 502?
I'll get into that in
Okay.
a while.
I'm interested in in purchasing a
Yeah.
515.
Yeah. So that's why I think the mental health system is off. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Thinking guilt trip.
Yeah.
That's what causes mental health.
Yeah.
I'm fairly new to this business. And I would like to understand, before we go any
Sure.
further, what respite care is. And I'm from Aroostook County, but I'm currently living in the Bangor area where there is no respite
Yeah.
care. But I'm planning
Yeah.
on moving back to Aroostook County.
Okay.
Can you talk to
Respite.
what is it? In a-
Respite, there's so many definitions as to what respite
For
is.
mentally ill.
I don't think there is even a standard definition of what we're talking about because there's so many different variations. You could be talking about respite for the client.
That's it. That's
But you
the
could
only
be
one I
talking
wanna
about
touch here.
respite for the care provider.
No,
and
I
that's
want to
what-
talk about the client.
Okay. I think respite for the client would be opportunities for vacations and get out, and this is what I would see it as. Simple as that. I mean, that's a bad
Is there
explanation.
any
That's what I think
available in the state of Maine?
Good, I know for sure.
And what is
Me?
It could be
Karen?
anybody,
Yeah, Amy
like
has a
maybe
program.
Karen
I'm,
can
I'm,
have
I'm
her
part
place.
of the
Yeah.
elite respite program.
Yep.
I'm a worker for them.
But-
I'm one of the companions, and what I do
Yeah.
is I take other companions out, and we just go out to have fun. We cannot talk about therapeutic issues. We're out there to go to a movie, to go to a dance, to go to a happy hour, to just sit over coffee and talk about things like another friend would talk to you and all.
So
And
it's like peer visiting, but it's
Yeah.
not,
That's-
in case, say, I feel I need to go to the hospital, but I don't really need the hospital, I don't need to be locked in, I don't need everything taken away from me, I don't need blah, blah, blah.
I know.
Where do I go?
Okay, then you can go to crisis intervention, crisis stabilization, which is a house that, it's not a hospital, but they have
Crisis
somebody
apartment.
there, it's an apartment,
Yeah.
that basically you can go and stay there. They only have 3 beds within the city of Portland, but you can stay there, you're supervised, the meals are provided there and all, and you have a time frame of how long you can stay. And so it's crisis stabilization in Portland. I don't know what it's called in other areas.
Crisis department.
Crisis intervention, I think. it's
Intervention.
called.
Montreal
Do
Street.
you know that in Bangor, there's nothing available?
Well, I think you should contact
I've
the
heard.
mental health agency or sort of advocating, tell them you need that.
Yeah.
See what, let them try to track it down for you. or create
That's
something
the
else.
unified correlation I was speaking of.
Yeah.
In general, you know,
Crisis
absolute
stabilization.
That's what it's called in
participation
I'm going to talk to you.
and not absolute domination. Wherein, you know, certain cities in the state of Maine, people come to Portland for
Yeah.
better mental health services, wherein it should be a unified service
Yeah, I agree with
in
you.
the state.
Yeah, I mean, every city really has such a different historical perspective on
Yes.
the system that they have.
A commonwealth.
And you just can't, it's so hard for them to change that sometimes.
And it's like that within the state. Every city seems to have a different concentration.
Yep.
You know, when you go to the emergency room, like this person was saying, you go to the emergency room, you don't get a mutual peer support when you go there. You get someone who wants to examine your mind and see how sick you really are. And believe you me, I went there recently, and they want to know how sick you are. So if you're not really in crisis, you're on the borderline. The questioning and the line of therapy.
Let me just say one other thing about respite, though, before we get off that.
Yes.
Respite can also mean the care provider
Yeah.
gets out too,
Yeah.
and they need that in order to be able to function as well as they can. And respite sometimes is also for families, not just regular care providers. I mean, care providers that are families.
You mean
And-
my husband, if he
Yeah.
can't stand me any
Yeah.
longer because
Yeah.
of my mental illness,
They can come in
he can
and
come and go
supervise
to the
you.
movies with you.
No, he has to go in. They have to go in and
Well,
watch you.
I
and
want
you
to say
go out
something
and
about
do
what you said.
Yeah,
They
go ahead.
can't.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay.
I've taken clients, consumers,
Yes.
people to the
Yeah.
hospital. And the reason why that's such an issue is because some people, over and over again, claim something's wrong and nothing is wrong. In other words, they say, I feel suicidal, but it's just a way of manipulating the system. So the doctors are really, like, well, who's telling the truth here and there? And I've had, even though the person's used the system 100 times before, I've said, well, the person said the magic word in my presence, That's all I need, and I said to the doctor, you better put the person in the hospital. There's no
Yeah.
question about it. But sometimes, like I said, you might get a little bit of a, you know, like I said, an attitude or whatever. It's just because some people do manipulate the system.
Yeah, well, I can relate to what you're saying. As an advocate, that's your responsibility. You either call the police or you take the person to the emergency room. Or take the person to crisis intervention, you know, to be examined. But the point I'm trying to say, you can go in there for sexual abuse, and they might not even have a sexual abuse counselor on the staff, and they'll sit there and examine your mind, and before they tell you that there's no sexual abuse counselor received, you should go to a community service. Why couldn't they tell you that up front?
I want to know why we can't talk about housing.
Okay, let's go. Okay, housing, that's what we're
Oh,
talking
you
about.
got a question, go right ahead.
No, well, that's it. I want to know about housing.
Yeah. Ask what you want to know.
Like how, well,
Yeah.
go ahead, anything.
The housing, the bottom line pretty much to a lot of the housing stuff
Talking about
is that
environmental problems is what I'm talking about.
if you're talking about rental housing, Maine State Housing Authority is really the place you got to go. I don't know how many of you have ever seen this book, the State Housing Authority, but it's got all the different projects, who to contact for Section 8 scattered site or different projects. Section 8 housing financially is the best bet for the average person. So I don't know how many people are under Section 8 right now.
That Portland's trying to cut it off.
Yeah.
They're not going to get away with it.
We'll see. We'll see.
There's no way.
How many people are on subsidized housing here? I mean, that's financially your best bet because the place should be safe and affordable, and that's the bottom line. Are you satisfied with the housing you have? Yeah, pretty much. You're satisfied with your housing. You're going to get people the highest satisfaction.
I haven't lived in a house where I've been satisfied yet.
Yeah, okay. I haven't either. So that's who you contact for a book, and you know, as advocates, you should get a hold of that book. Just call this for the State Housing Authority. Ask for the big packet. That's a key one right there. Farmers Home Administration. Excuse me. Farmers Home Purchase Program has a number of different programs based on what your income is that you might be eligible to purchase a house. And I don't know if anybody's gone through Farmers Home, tried to purchase a place. Any luck? Is that what you have now?
Well, no. I had applied and I was accepted. I did not know that you only had a year to come up with a property.
Yeah.
So I had to go through a reading.
Yeah.
I want to split it.
If I want one.
Yeah. Farmers Home is also one of your best deals in terms of your housing cost and the quality of the house you get. Depending on where the area is, usually you can't do it in the cities, the urban areas. It has to be more of a rural area. But the definition is pretty wide open. Usually you're going to find that they call it a house. Usually going to be pretty basic styles, ranches or capes or things like that. Sometimes you can buy an older house that's in pretty good shape. They're generally going to be, you know, under 80,000, that type of range, price range. In the cities, I mean, in the more urban areas, that could be hard. But out in the rural areas, you should be able to find places.
You can actually get them to build them for you, too.
Yeah.
You can actually get a contractor and have a new one built.
Well, with Farmers Home, you're going to have some cash that you put into the deal. Might be, I would say, probably around $2,000. And the leases last for 33 years usually. Your circumstances, if they change, you fall into a different category. Your payments might go up as your income goes up. But most people stay pretty much the same, I think, through the program. Experiences I had as a real estate broker working with them, it looked like it was a lot of work, and this is what real estate brokers try to avoid dealing with farmers' home houses. It looks like a lot of work, a lot of paperwork, a lot of failures and things like that. But the properties that I sold that went through farmers' home, this is late 1980s, went through fairly easily. It wasn't that big a deal. It wasn't that much of a problem getting them through. And it's quite a bit of paperwork, but if you follow the book and you have a good broker, you'll be all set. So,
Which book?
No. One of the other things I want to talk about real estate brokers, provided you should get in touch with a real estate broker, work through one if you are eligible for Farmers Home. And there are probably different brokers that probably specialize more in Farmers Home properties than others. But you definitely need a good real estate broker to work with. I think it's really definitely to your advantage to get your best
possible chance of getting the place. A lot of times real estate brokers, the way they would view you is kind of the low end if you are eligible. You'll find some newer brokers that probably want to work with you because they need the business. But the way the market had been until probably recently when it's picked up is that just about any broker would try to work with you if they had a motivated buyer, a qualified buyer. They'll see it through. I mean, they act as cheerleaders for you. They do all the paperwork, a lot of the running around, and it'll save you a lot of time and effort, and they know the market usually. Generally, when you try to buy property, what you really have to, most banks, and this is going to get into the whole financing issue. Most of you folks, I don't know what your incomes are. Give me an idea. What, 6,000? I mean, 6,000 a year. 5,000 a year. Zero. Well, if you have an income like you're on Social Security disability, but if you're in the higher, like $700 or $800 a month, you have a much better chance because the ratios work a lot better. Generally, the way this is for just about all programs is that a certain percentage of your income is allowed to go for housing, and your mortgage, the amount of money that you can borrow, is based on a certain percentage of what your income is. For most people, like an upper, middle income, it's figured at 20% of what your gross income is, you're allowed for mortgage, taxes, and insurance. And let's say your income is, let's say, well, 20,000. I mean, that's more middle income. 28% of that. Let's say 28%. I don't have a calculator, but I'll give you some ballpark figures. That's nearly 30%. So you $600 per month. Let's see. No, I did that wrong. $6,000 per year is available for your mortgage, taxes, and insurance. And this ratio is pretty much industry-wide. Okay. This is like all your conventional financing will be based on this here. One of the things that will be the variable is what the interest rate is that you pay. Like if you have a high interest rate, it means that a lot of your money's here that's available in a year is going to be eaten up by the interest. If you have a low interest rate, you've got a lot more available for the actual pay on the principal and the taxes and insurance. Everybody follow me so far? How many people have ever gone through this here? Does this sound familiar? This is the bottom line in terms of real estate. Okay. What happens is, okay, let's say somebody's at 20,000. That divide this by 12. That's about 500 per month available for mortgage, taxes, and insurance. Most houses, the insurance is going to be probably $25 a month. Taxes will probably, depending on where you live, maybe 80 to 100 at the level of the house you're going to be buying out here. Let's say at 80. So you have approximately. I'm not doing this exact, okay? Let's make that 20. That's 100. That's 100. Okay, 500 minus 100 means that you have $400 available per month for your mortgage. Okay? That 400 is really going to determine how much you can buy on the house. Okay? On top of this, you're going to need money for a down payment, and the down payment is related to loan to value, that whoever's financing your property is going to want to see you put some money into the whole deal. Usually, the government programs might get it down to 3%. This is FHA does that. Some of the other programs might be 5%. Farmer's Home, actually, there's no down payment. You're just paying for closing costs. So let's say it is. Let me think. Say it's 5% you need down. 5% of, let's say, probably in a $70,000 to $80,000 range here that you can afford based on this income. 5% of that would be around $7,000, $6,000. Excuse me, that's not true. $4,000. So you're down to about $70,000. You would, and then say you go from 75 down to 70. You'd be borrowing against, let's say, 70,000. I don't have a book here to figure this out. Based on income of 400, do you have any handle on that one?
Bring me up to speed here.
Yeah. No, we were saying income of 400.
Right.
What would be the interest? What would be the amount that somebody could borrow if this is what they have available for housing? I would say you're probably in the 60 range.
How many years?
30 years.
Depending on like a 2 or 3 or 4%
600,
interest.
Yeah. I'm just telling you from my real estate experience. We don't even know exactly, but I think that's what you're talking about based on income of 20,000. Okay, that's 20,000. We're talking about you folks having incomes of $7,000, $8,000 a piece, right? You're lucky.
$28,800.
Oh, okay. You're all set.
Sure. Mike can fund a grant program.
Yeah. But so this is, let's say, these gives you an idea of what you can afford at 20,000 income. A lot of you folks are talking about incomes of $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. The only way that you're going to be able to do it is a bunch of you to home share together, to get your incomes together somehow, combined, and try to set up some sort of, I don't know, informal co-op or something like that.
Well, maybe you can get a job.
Yeah.
And keep it for a week.
Yep. But the problem is,
You can work for Todd.
yeah. The problem is, I mean, a lot of
Once
financing.
a weekend.
I mean, that's what you need to get is that type of situation. Okay. Banks are more and more amenable to home sharing types of things where people share and buy a property jointly. A lot of that has to do with, to be honest with you, gay rights in terms of couples coming together, banks having to be more flexible, more recognize that more willingly than they have in the past, or couples cohabitating. I know, like 10 or 15 years ago, banks were really reluctant to deal with those situations, and now they're much more willing to do it. Home sharing. So I'm trying to really push the idea of home sharing somehow. It's not going to be an ideal situation, but it's going to be your best bet in terms of buying a property. What goes along with that, though, now once you get into a property somehow and you have some sort of mechanism to keep on paying your mortgage regularly and things like that, you're developing credit. Maybe your situation will improve, and you're also building some equity in the property you're at. And eventually, you know, you could set it up that you folks would sell after so many years and try to use the equity individually to purchase your own place. That's the sad, hard reality. Really the way that you're going to have to get into this whole thing. There might be some programs out there. There currently is with that program through BMH that has like a $5,000 grant that can be factored in there. That's basically going to reduce your cost, you know, your purchase price down. The numbers that I've run.
Is that a brand new program, Jack? That $5,000?
Yeah, and with some monies apparently that the Disabilities Council had sitting around for a number of years, and they finally decided they should get it out.
Forfeiture
So let's get it out, they said. Let's put it out, and that's what they've done.
Yeah.
Based on those incomes of everybody, let me back up here. I think on an income, let's say, of SSI or a higher Social Security disability that's around $600 a month, SSI obviously isn't that, but if you had an income around $600 a month, you can afford a property of around, you can afford a mortgage, I think, in probably the $15 to $17 to $20,000 range.
Okay, can we hold it there for
Sure.
just 1 second, and I
Yep.
won't take up people's time much here.
Yeah.
$600 a month income.
Yep.
You can afford perhaps a house
Yeah.
for $15,000.
Yeah.
There are many homes in Aroostook County that
Yeah.
you can buy for $10,000,
Yep.
$12,000.
Yep.
Are they?
But,
Excuse me.
pardon me? Go ahead.
Are they presently?
Livable?
Yeah,
No.
that's what
Okay.
I thought.
Yeah.
These
So you need to
rehab.
borrow
Rehab
perhaps
house.
another $10,000.
Yeah. Now what you
Ken?
the
Alpha?
numbers won't work to
Oh,
borrow it.
okay.
You're going to need some sort of program that's going to give it to you as a grant, or is some way I'm going to subsidize what the interest
Where
rate or
is this
payment.
some sort of program?
That's some sort of program. Is that $5,000 one that was through the BMR.
Not if you already own your home.
Yeah, if you already own your home.
If that won't work.
Well, then what you should do then is sell your home and
Remortgage.
remortgage
Sell
it.
my home.
Yeah.
Do you rent it? I thought you said
No,
you
I
rent.
own.
You own.
Well, I
Okay.
own a home,
Yeah.
but for medical reasons, I can't live in the woods where my home is. I have
You
to
rent
live
out.
in Bangor.
Okay.
And I have a Section 8.
Okay.
But I want to go home
Yeah.
to my home, but it's not livable. It's a
Yeah.
woods camp.
Yeah.
But I own it.
Yeah, there.
I'm-
Is it in Surrey?
The thing is, you would have some sort of equity in that property.
About
There is some
$10,000.
sort of value
Yep.
to that.
that should be factored into that whole thing.
So there's
The mortgage.
a possibility.
It's the whole value of the whole property, the land and the property.
But I
is the
have
way it would be figured out.
poor credit.
Yeah, that's the real problem. That's why you need a government program that's pretty flexible around it. If you have bad credit, you're going to have problems dealing with the bank, so you're really going to need some special assistance. There's not much, the credit, if you have bad credit, people with high incomes and bad credit have a lot of problems buying property. So with low income and bad credit, you got some problems.
Well, that goes hand in
Oh, I
hand.
did feel great today.
A lot of times when you
Gotta get
poor,
down.
and you're trying to replenish something, you know, it's
Let him
desirable
have with
for.
depression.
Yeah.
So the bad kind
Feel
of
alive.
poor,
Yeah.
go hand in hand.
I mean, it's systematic problem.
Is there some way that can be
It's a whole
overcome?
living
It takes time and regularly paying your bills,
scenario
and you might
you know,
work out of it that way. I'll tell you, one of the best things that's happened in terms of bad credit for low income is just the way the economy's gone so bad, because a lot of higher income people are developing really bad credit. And you're going to see the credit, I would expect credit worthiness being looked at less seriously because of the wealthier people that are trying to get back in the real estate market. One of the little bad benefits about bad times, but
Would this be a good time to jump into the 515?
515. When you keep on saying 515, you're talking about Farmers Home 515.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's talking about
There are so many,
Talk about real
so many
estate.
programs.
She wants to know.
You're talking about Farmers Home 515 program.
I guess I am. That was something
Okay.
that was thrown around for discussion not that long ago here at one of the meetings.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I think maybe we can take a break.
Oh, okay.
And
Is this working for you folks? I mean, just bouncing around like this?
I feel
Yeah,
alive.
I didn't know I had problems till you told me. It's working great.
Thank you, Jack.
Is this working for you folks? No, this is.
Yeah, see, Jack is very structured.
I can tell. I can tell.
Like
Thank you.
a role
No,
play.
you don't do
That's actually happening.
Oh, okay, great. Oh, okay.
Actually, you're lucky we're asking you questions and you're passing around.
Basically, any development, you're going to have to figure out what the incomes are, what type of income you can bring in, and what the costs are going to be, and see how that can be run over 30 years under a joint type of, under a development process. Generally, try to explain. Remember when I said that one person can ordinarily afford a mortgage of $17,000 or so over 30 years? Most of these development monies that are out there for financing under like HUD or Farmers Home for developing projects, and I assume that's what we're talking about here. Most of these programs are built on the same numbers. And I said, you folks are eligible for $17,000 to develop a unit of housing. Let's say a project or something like that can run anywhere from, usually it'll run around $40,000 to $50,000. But what experiences you've had, Todd, developing properties on a per unit basis, let's say on an 8 to 10 type of unit project?
Well, the two I'm most familiar with has been the group homes. So they've been, basically really a group living situation. I really don't know very much at all about individual.
We're not talking residential, individual residents. Then, if we're talking this particular program, then we are.
No, this is more. It's more like a development project. Is what I'm talking about. Let's say a 5 or 10 unit subsidized housing unit building, 5 to 10 units. So what happens is under this thing, if you folks individually can afford maybe $17,000, the actual housing cost per unit might be around $40,000 to $50,000 a unit. So your incomes can support that part. This is where the tricky part comes in. You get it up to there, $20,000 to $30,000 extra that has to be somehow financially taken care of. And what happens is a lot of these times that they get under some of these programs are special tax credits for low-income housing tax credits that'll get that amount down. They have to figure in maintenance costs and utilities and things like that. So it's really hard to develop projects around this income here. what happens is there have to be programs where you have people with higher incomes somehow in the project. And that's why when you see these mixed-use types of projects, that's what you're seeing more and more of now, is like 10%, 20% will be low income, and the other 30% or so will be higher income. So you get higher incomes. As a result of the higher incomes, then you can support higher rents as a percentage. This makes sense. I mean, this is basic real estate development, and that's what all the programs are all going to be just like that. It's just a matter of making the numbers work.
That seems to be the way our structure of government is. We got conservative, we got moderate, and we got
But see, there's a gap in between. It's how you get that gap. That's what the key.
How could she buy a house?
Okay, how could you buy a house? Like I said, I don't know what your income is, but it's going to be basically how much can you afford at this type of situation here. This is your only income. You should be, if you have good credit, you have some cash, and sufficient income, you shouldn't have any problem going to a real estate broker and have them qualify you, running those same types of numbers that I did earlier, and they should be able to work with you under available programs. You work through the real estate broker, they usually go to the bank, and they'll try to figure out which the bank and the real estate broker and yourself will try to see what program you're going to fit into best. But there is no magic formula to get in there. It's
I think my confusion was, though, Jack, that I understood there to be funding available for people to buy individual residences at 1% interest.
Yeah, Farmers Home would have that. Maine State Housing Authority would have those same types of programs. They're out there all the time. Yeah.
Now, I've heard this before. I don't know if it's true. And if you're collecting Social Security, does that mean you can buy a house? I heard that you couldn't buy a house if you were collecting Social Security. Is that true?
No, I've never heard that.
I don't understand why.
That's not true?
It shouldn't be true.
You can have one.
It shouldn't be true. You probably can't afford to pay your rent.
Right, that's the issue that if you're on SSI especially, your income's going to be so low.
So you can own a house?
Yeah.
If you could find a house for $17,000,
yes,
you could do it. Or if you could home share with somebody else and get it up to $35,000 or $40,000, and you're in a real estate market where the house prices are low enough, you can do that. Rockland right now, there are a number of properties on the market for $30,000 to $40,000.
But the prohibitants, that prohibition is still in there, such as two people. See, the government sets all these guidelines down to
what's
income.
a family and
how much money you can have in a household. That to me, that's discriminatory practice to stop two people from living together in a tranquil environment that they can afford, no matter how much income both people have together.
Right.
The point is that their domestic tranquility cannot be ensured by a government that prohibits them to have their access.
But it's also a risk factor how people are going to live together and stuff like that too, I guess, and they should be factoring that in. Don?
To continue on her question, it seems to me that I had heard of a program where it was very little down payment, if none.
Yeah, home
1%, and like a 50-year mortgage.
The way this works is Farmers Home has programs, Farmers Home Administration. Don't call it FHA, it's Farmers Home Administration. They have meetings, depending on where the office is, either once a month or once a week, where you go in and they explain the program to you. Informational meetings. Has anybody ever gone to one of those at all? They explain the whole program, the information, what types of houses you can buy, what the areas are, what the incomes are, the whole process. And then what they'll tell you to do is go try to find a house that'll fit under there, into the program that they're talking about. This is where sometimes you can hook into a real estate broker, a real estate agent that knows that market, and they might be able to find a program for you. Their programs, what they do, they subsidize the payment basically if you get down to, I believe, 1%. And depending on what your income is, you might pay 2% or 3% or 4%. It's all graduated up through. I think it's up to 8%. The mortgages last for 33 years, and they do those same types of ratios that I was talking about. Instead of that 28% of your income, I think they probably get it up to like 42%, but they include other things in there, so it's still And then that's really one of your best bets in terms of buying a property.
You said that was family home?
Farmers Home Administration.
Oh, farmers. FM.
Some people say FHA, and that's Federal Housing Administration,
Yeah,
which is
that's
a different program. So it's kind of confusing on that.
That was home starters, right? I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I'll get into that in a second. That's the part of the other
If you
program.
wanted a schedule of when they met,
Yeah, just contact your local Farmers Home office, the supervisor. I mean, they just call the office, and they'll usually, I know in Cumberland County it's usually weekly. I'm not sure what it is up in Rockland, but it's periodically. And this is the way that they funnel everybody through it, because they know that most people are just going to kind of hear it, and it's really hard for them to even fit into that program. They give up. And you probably will. They'll give you an application package too that you're going to start processing, and they'll be verifying your incomes. Farmers Home also is fairly strict in terms of the inspections that have to happen with the properties. They seem to be tighter than most of the other types of programs. And the house has to be called modest. You can't have a swimming pool. You can't have a jacuzzi and all that stuff. Generally, it'll be like 800 to 1,000 square feet. They tend to be ranches, capes, and older houses. Well, some farmhouses will fit under there. There's also like assumable mortgages versus the assumable ones are usually easier to get into because their Farmers Home is really trying to push and get rid of them, and you get better rates and better prices on those. Generally, I'm trying to think, under Farmers Home, a lot of times I'm not sure what it is right now, but the seller might be required to pay points. And I don't know if you know what a point is, but it's at 1% of what the mortgage price is. And sometimes it's not that attractive to the seller to go through that type of program. But a lot of times what will happen is you'll see the people making all these deals. They'll kind of, you buy the stove and refrigerator from them separately, and they'll pay the points. I mean, it's kind of a different deal that you have to come up with. So there's a lot of little gray areas you can play around with that one. Maine State Housing Authority runs a bunch of programs geared towards, say, the low income, but it's really not low income. It's a little bit higher sometimes. And they have, I'm trying to think, it's called Head Start, Home Start program, where they have a deal where they help to subsidize the closing cost, and they get the interest down to like 1 or 2%. Sometimes your very best deal would be a Maine State Housing Authority program that utilizes the Farmers Home somehow. It's a combination of these two programs. Financing is your best deal. That you get the lowest on the closing cost, and you get the lowest interest rate combined. But generally, what happens with this is the bank is the one that has to qualify you, and there are certain banks. I'm not sure every bank participates in this program, but generally your larger banks will do it, and a lot of the local savings banks will be under their programs. And it's funny, they really don't push it that much, but if they see somebody that's going to fit with the whole thing, they'll try to get you through it. So those are the programs. I mean, that's it. 30 years, 1%. I mean, that's you got to have good credit. So you have to have sufficient income to afford the mortgage, and then you have to be able to find a house within the price range of the mortgage you can afford. So let's say your chances of finding a eligible house in a real estate market that tends to be rural, that has lower priced houses, and I mean, this Rockland area where I'm at, the houses, high 20s, low 30s, 40,000, fairly nice places that you can find, and I think there are other communities across the state that have that same thing.
Really, in the high 20s, there are houses?
Yeah.
That don't need a lot of rehab?
We have one right now that's, it was about, I think the value was around 24, we could probably put 5 into it.
Yeah.
It's a 2-bedroom house. They're there. This is within a half mile of the ocean too.
Is that Gray Street?
No, that's Thomason Street. Gray Street probably around 50.
How about that little bitty one on the corner?
That one probably around 30,000. And I've got a duplex that I'm picking up that'll be probably around $25,000, $30,000 per side, so it'll be about $60,000.
That's worth commuting for, right?
Yeah. So that's kind of where it's at. You have to find low-cost housing. You have to be able to afford it, and you have to find a bank that's willing to finance you. Anything's possible in that range. And you're going to be in obviously say location's everything, but you're going to tend to be further out in the country. That's where the prices are cheaper. And the quality of the house itself might be one of the least desirable houses, in a neighborhood or something. But you can always fix it up. Well, the problem with these programs here, though, a lot of times fixer-uppers don't fit too well because they need so much work. If you're a carpenter, you think you do all the work yourself, they're going to look really closely at you, and the house is going to fail appraisals and things like that. It gets really tricky trying to pull those off. So you really need a better shape, a house that's in better shape to start.
It does sound like a gray area, though, where if you're trying to apply and get into a program for 1% type of thing, but still get your income high enough.
Hello?
Get the
Blue Omega with lights on. Anybody have a Blue Omega here?
me.
Uh-oh.
Did you turn on the brake, Don?
Yeah, he'll be walking home, so okay. Better start walking, Don.
That's the bottom line with home purchase. I mean, it's simple as that, really. Remember what I'm saying about the 17 to 20,000? There are some programs out there, and that's the one that that $5,000 through the HAV, or the Home Ownership Assistance Venture. Then you're getting the house up, adding 5,000 to that 17 to 20,000, so you're affording up to 23, 25,000. And then if you got two people living together, then you can afford a house of 50,000.
What about manufactured housing?
Manufactured should be it should fit the same way, and they're a lot more receptive too. The code and the laws and things like that have made manufactured housing meet the same regulations newer places, especially as stick-built houses. And construction-wise, they should be in as good a shape. When you say manufactured, though, are you talking modular? Are you talking mobile homes?
Prefab. 14 by 8, something like that.
They should be meeting most of these standards. And a lot of those you can buy for $20,000, and then you start throwing in the land and development costs, site costs. You're talking probably 15. I'm talking about a new one, probably 15. You might be able to get in for 45 to 50,000, that range, in a fairly normal location. So land costs are generally going to be, say 15, 20,000 per unit, 25 sometimes. Buying older existing ones is really a problem. That's where it gets tricky because the inspections of the places might need a lot of work, and they're not in very good shape sometimes. But anything built after, I think it's 1978, usually is a higher standard. The standards were higher than at that point. So that's pretty much it. I mean, that's the bottom line in terms of buying property. I really don't have any secret ways you can do it other than trying to apply for these $5,000 grants or $10,000 grants. Or say the idea of, excuse me?
The income combined.
Yeah, the income combined, or setting up a co-op type of thing where a bunch of people come together and set up an organization that's able to apply as a nonprofit to do things. There's also monies available for something called a CHODO, and I talked about that earlier, but it's a Community Housing Development Organization. And there are special funds, I think, set aside for those types of organizations to be able to access monies. They had a job in New Haven, Connecticut a couple months ago, and it's definitely something for groups to look into. Like mental health agencies don't qualify as a CHODO because we're not a community-based organization that a certain percentage of our board members have to be like tenants of the property or part of the population that's being served. Mental health agencies don't quite fit that criteria generally, whereas a housing development corporation, if it's set up around low-income housing, shouldn't really have any problem fitting that. A number of the community action agencies are certified as CHODOs. I know the one in the area that I'm at, Midcoast Human Resources Council, is a CHODO. So it's possible to do some housing development through a community action agency. On top of other resources you folks can tap into, one is Credit Counseling of Maine. And I don't know if anybody's ever been to credit counseling, but I remember personally when I bought my first house, 1976, I remember my wife and I going into the bank and thinking everything's all right, and they did a credit report on us, and they said, well, geez, you're not behind on anything, but it looks like you're kind of overextended. You've got a lot of credit cards and things like that. You're a higher risk. And they said, well, we suggest you go to credit counseling to get it straightened out or find ways to, consolidate your debts. And we went to credit counseling, and, they just laid out a plan. We didn't have to pay them or anything like that. They have other programs where you pay them a certain amount of money, and they take care of all your bills if you're behind in your debts. But credit counseling will sit down with you and go over your budget and try to help you find ways to, economize different things you should be concerned about. They'll help you get on a budget, and they'll help you with your credit, I think, down the road. And it's useful to learn. We have, as a part of that loan program that we've set up, we're having credit counseling in Maine come in and do a workshop. That's part of the plan, the proposal. And they're really open in terms of educational things. There might be somebody you might want to consider coming into this group here around credit issues. And I said credit is a big part of this whole thing. There's a lot of you folks can't get credit.
Yeah, the one thing I'm concerned about is the existing income of two individual recipients of whether it be supplementary or Social Security income.
Right.
Those problems have been causing crisis, unstabilization.
I don't want to. I don't work for Social Security and stuff. I don't want to make any. Just like I don't want to make any legal advice. If you have people coming together as a family, if it's going to affect your SSI income and things like that, I might want to know so I can design my program the right way. But if people are in there, I don't necessarily even want to be concerned about that issue. I just assume if you turn that thing off, people cheat a little bit and try to get through the system, and that's the way the system encourages you.
As an advocate, though, I'm concerned about the availability of the credit, which an individual has entitlement. And if that's discredited, individual has nothing with a disability.
Major issue. Banks, in terms of like giving credit, are really obligated to do a lot of social good as part of their licensing process. So sometimes you can hit them with the right thing, maybe try to loosen them up or try to develop some programs to help groups of people.
It seems that the programs are there, but like I say, the affiliation to have cohabitation, it seems as though the federal government sets its guidelines to conserve a certain lifestyle for themselves.
But see, every program's like that. I mean, it's a definition of family because the income limits are determine what the size of the family is, and you determine, is it based on common eating areas, separate bedrooms? There are just a lot of gray areas out there. And the way society's changing right now, it's really, it's got to be as open as possible, I think, and it's really hard to define things.
Way back when, to be
open
the other side of sexist, but way back when, women didn't have the mortgages. It doesn't really factor.
A lot of issues around that,
Oh, it's right on here.
In the bottom.
Okay, any other housing questions? Credit counseling is one. Let me think the other. Counseling, that's the key one, I think. And tying up with any agency that's out there, maybe. Oh, I know. The community action agencies are certified HUD counseling centers. A number of the agencies are, and it depends on which area you're in. But they are supposed to provide staff to offer you technical assistance in terms of home purchase, and that's what they do. But what I found is, I mean, I did dump on the CAP agencies, but they really don't have the expertise to really do a good job with that. I mean, sometimes the waiting lines are pretty bad.
It's kind of like they want to do it in the group type.
Yeah.
The individual, it's just, they're really not, don't have the expertise for the individual.
Or they just...
individual family.
They just aren't there.
Gets this. And everything else gets the raise. You need a certain skill level. And that's what I come on saying about real estate brokers. These are people that are in their business. You're not paying them, but they're going to get a commission out of the deal. Might as well use the system to your advantage to get them to do some work for you for free. Believe me, real estate brokers have helped more low-income people buy houses than any CAP agencies or anybody else. I've purchased
real estate brokers.
Real estate brokers are very helpful.
And they'll find ways to get you through the system.
Yeah, when they're honest people.
And their business livelihood depends on it.
You had just said, other than these $5,000 grants and the $10,000 grants, I've got the $5,000 one down pat. What was the $10,000 one?
No, I'm not sure what specifically what I was saying, but what happens is organizations, let's say you set up a co-op or something like that. It's an organization, or you have somebody sponsoring you this one. You can put together a package. And remember how I said there was that gap in between the $40,000 and the $20,000? That you could apply, like there's a federal home loan board out of in Massachusetts, in New England. An organization can apply for that, and they'll be able to either get a grant or a really low-interest loan that the organization will pick up somehow to cover the difference. And what happens a lot of times is it might be just combinations of different things that a group will tie into. In terms of you individually, Rich Aunt Lily is your best bet.
Yes, I'd like to address this issue then, okay, just a bit. I raised $65,000 for a homeless shelter through grant writing, through Mid-State Housing. Great, wonderful, hey, yes. I might want $10,000 because I'm living with no running water, with no heat, with no, I have a mental health disability. And I know it appears today like, and I don't know if everyone wanted this discussion, but it's co-op living, let's all get together, communal living, let's... and I'm feeling a bit frustrated. Well, there is nothing really out there. It's like I hear you saying, for the individual that's living on SSDI under $600 a month.
I hate to tell you, that's the reality of the whole thing.
Okay, that's what I need to hear.
Sounds good. But there's such a difference there. You would have to get an outright grant of maybe $20,000. The system can't afford that, the whole social service system. They can afford a bunch of $5,000 ones, and you kind of make it difficult for people to qualify. Afford those. But you can't, it's just not set up to do that level, that deep a subsidy. It's just not set up that way.
What would Section 8 subsidies over umpteen years run versus a $30,000 grant?
You're perfectly right. You're exactly right. And I think if you look at like the Farmers Home Program, the way that's worked, in fact, that's kind of the way it's worked. Farmers Home, for instance, under any of those programs, you really don't build up much equity in the house ever, unless you're in the right real estate market. In effect, that's kind of a something in between.
Depreciation equity.
Yeah, right. That's when we're talking about a mobile home. Sometimes you get into lower depreciation rates because the prices tend to pull up as well sometimes. That's the reality. I don't. To be honest with you, I don't see any amount of anything's going to happen overnight to change that one at all. A number of the mental health agencies have small subsidies to get incomes that they run themselves. I know the agency I'm at has a small subsidy that we can subsidize people down to 50% of their incomes, and we don't do any more than that because we want people on the Section 8 waiting list. The program you folks were talking about to get it down to 50%, that's another way to get into that gap in between, if you understand what I'm saying. Some way to make up the difference is. I don't know what that program was that, I should know his name.
Bill Floyd.
Bill Floyd was talking about. But that's all it's doing is trying to figure out some way to narrow that gap.
There's very little money involved anyway. It's only going to be 50 people. Initially, for the first year.
The thing I would like to see, the programs that I've been involved with in the past is like self-help types of programs too, and that's part of it is home sharing, but like home purchase, home building types of courses where people work together either as a group or individually and get government assistance to do that and technical assistance as well as the materials. That's another way that you're narrowing that gap there, that your labor might be the value of $5,000 to $10,000, and then you get an agency to come up with the difference. And in a way, that's the way when they talk about Habitats for Humanities, that's kind of the way that's working. It's donated labor, donated materials. Your labor is involved. There's a certain value to that, and you can do it. But obviously, that doesn't work for everybody either. You have to be able to have some skills around that and find a bank or a program that's flexible enough to work with you. Some of the community action agencies right now are doing that type of thing, and I talked about that agency in Lewiston Marvin Community Concept. They have it's called mutual self-help, where they get a group of people together, like I think it's 5 to 7 families at a time, and they each work on, as a group, on a house by house, and some training and the materials tied to that, and then they can really make something for people. And they're coming up with houses probably have a value of maybe $60,000, pretty simple ones that are partly owner built. Depending on where you live, that's a great deal. It's a nice place.
Okay, can I be a bit creative here?
Sure.
Test something
Yeah.
on here. Alpha 1.
Yeah.
Loan.
Yeah. Alpha 1 loans is a part of the whole thing.
If I can't, if moving back into the woods with no running water would not be good for my health, surely I would qualify for an Alpha 1 loan.
Yeah. I think you should be able to make that argument, or there are resources out there to do that. I don't know if their programs will open enough to do that, but it's a matter of people put pressure on them and asking to have it done. Okay, are we winding down here, gang, or are we getting warmed up?
We're winding down.
Okay.
Was there, you had come prepared to talk to us about housing, and as well as grant writing, and was there something else that you had in your little bag of tricks there that you...
Well, quickly, I'll just go through this grant writing thing here, this brochure here. I think this is a resource that you folks, this is what I use as part of my course. You're all involved with organizations now. I assume your volunteer efforts or some nonprofit you're involved with. This is my syllabus, my course. Page 2 is something called a grant concept outline. And this is basically just taking a program idea and just keep on developing it as far as you can. And it's kind of the outline for any sort of proposal that you want to write. You just have to fill out the questions. I've got this on my computer. It's really easy to use. It's a format. Page 3 and 4 is a proposal checklist for any program that you write. This is all the stuff that has to be filled in. These are the questions that have to be answered. It's all right there. So I use my computer a lot, and it's just a matter of formatting the computer and just keep on adding ideas. Page 5 is just a sample cover sheet for just a generic proposal. Page 6 is a list of all the different types of funding sources that you can go after to develop something. It's a nonprofit or as a housing program. I think it covers everything. I mean, it covers all of them. I'm not going to go into it right now. When you write page 7, when you write a proposal, you need needs assessments to document what the problem is. This is places where you get a needs assessment done. Page 8, your organization should have a grant writing library, and this is pretty much all the items that I think that you need for a library. Really stay on top of what grant writing is all about. I've got several of the items here. This is a directory of Maine foundations put out by the University of Southern Maine Office of Sponsored Research. You've seen it before. It's a good source of smaller foundation grants in the state. North Kennebec region also puts the Regional Planning Agency up here puts out a book that's very similar to the Directory of Maine Foundations book. Lists a lot of things. I'm going to pass out. This is called ERC. Oh, jeez. This is called news briefs. I only have one. I've got the old ones here. They changed their names, so I really should pass those out. Yeah, you should make copies of that.
Okay, well, do that.
Or at least, is that a problem? Circulate.
No, I can circulate it, and then we can...
This is the one single funding thing that I get that's most important of all. It's called ERC News Briefs, and it lists all the different funding things that are out for a lot of different social services. There are other publications that are out, but they tend to concentrate on a specific area. Like I've got something called the Mental Health Funding News here someplace. That every social service field has their own specialty newsletter. This one here is the only one that I know of that covers them all. And this goes from aging, arts and humanities, children and community development, drugs and alcohol, education, employment, environment, handicapped, health, homelessness, housing, justice, management, minority affairs, parish life, preservation, refugees, rural social services, women, youth. it'll have different sections on each one of those, on what's hot right now in terms of funding sources. This thing only costs $65 a year. It's the best buy you can get of anything that's going on. Most people aren't amazed on my workshop. I usually hand out samples of them. That's why I don't have them right now. I'm pass them out. But everybody's just amazed at what the information in this thing here. So, and I get $10 for every one I sell. No, I don't really. But
is there any place like that from banks on properties? Is there any centrally located?
Yeah, the foreclosed property stuff. That one. You might get some good deals under. You're talking about like what we picked up with our houses. If that type of list is out there, you're competing against a lot of
real estate people.
Yeah, real estate people that know what's good and what isn't. They can evaluate it, and you're really not going to find the bargains you think you are.
Okay.
It sounds great. I'm going to an auction and I'm going to get it at half price and stuff like that. What you get at half price is a timeshare condo someplace, or you really don't get any good properties that are worth it at that. You might get like 80 to 90% value on a property, but it doesn't mean it's worth it to you. It's really not worth it to you.
How about that program that the payback that all the banks who are going under? Anything out of that?
The RTC, they're basically just running the program. I think they're funding some of the programs off that, but there's really no direct money off those. Let me think. What page started off on? 9. Sources of labor. This is a list of different. Usually, when you're developing a program, 80 to 90% of your costs are going to be labor costs. Any way you can reduce your cost through volunteer labor or other sources of labor, you're going to really be able to come up with a program very, very cheaply. And I've listed a bunch of labor sources you can come up with. Page 10, 11, and 12 is just some planning for nonprofits, and it's information organizationally about what the difference is between a mission statement, goals and objectives, and activities. And if you write grants at all, or you're into program development, or you're into business planning, this is information you need to know. And as your organization develops, you really have to become more and more familiar with this whole language. And this is the language of grant writing. Okay,
I would like to emphasize to these people the value of that last one. I mean, the help that you gave us.
Used it. Good.
I mean, if we didn't have that, we would still be on.
On page 1.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, Jack.
Yes, Jack. Thank
Well,
you.
you still have another one, page 13?
Well, the last one is my favorite. This is words that sell and words that unsell.
Yeah.
And if you're doing your writing, and grant writing is a big part of writing is
The word,
coming up with the right words.
word is flesh.
This list here is really funny. They've done research, and this is in marketing and advertising and things like that. But there's certain words that people are more receptive to. There are other words that are like turn-offs. And it's like a subconscious thing, but we are all about language. If you take that little Gregoric style test, that's all about language, and it's how we think. But these are words to avoid, I mean, words that unsell, the words that sell. And it's funny, that one of the words that unsell is use the word sell, right?
Celibacy.
You know, these are the values you want to be pushing in your proposals. Okay, that's basically all I want to throw at you folks. I got a batch of other stuff, but I've put out a thing here how to develop a board of directors, and this is just a nice little outline about how to look at people.
I think that was on the top of
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Jack.
Yes.
I enjoyed having you with us.
Very reasonable. Very
Thanks for getting out and
informational.
Yeah.
Well, I had a chance to dress in your jeans today.
Right. Do I usually don't? I usually don't, do I?
No, you
I
don't.
just wanted to get down.
No, I've been trying to give him a pair of roller skates for years.
Yeah, I'm up down a lot.
We know clothes don't make us a better man. They make us look better.
No, I'm going on vacation tomorrow. I'm
All
flying out
right.
tomorrow morning to Georgia, and I'll be down there for a week. So
All right.
I've kind of disassociated already.
We're down south in Dixie.
Yeah.
Are you going to network with Ray?
20
Or Roy, or whatever his name is?
Who's that?
The one on that.
Bill Floyd?
No.
I got it.
You got it great.
Yeah, found it. No, the one on the respite. Dave. Dan.
Oh, Dan Page.
Dan
Yeah.
Page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I supervise him, so yeah, I'll be in touch with him.
I was wondering if you guys knew each other. Hey, look at, could you give her the 800 number? You
Nice to
know,
meet you.
so you can get a hold of the DFA.
Thanks.
Here you go.
We have to leave, but I'd like to get together with you sometime.
Oh, yeah.
Schedule.
Well, here,
I'm
let me,
Maureen.
let me put down my address.
Jack, advocate for
Yeah.
with the
I
word.
go crazy with it, you know.
Okay, have a safe
Yeah, I'm
one.
having
Good
a
to
good
see you.
time.
Okay.
It's over?
I guess it's over, right?
After the
It's over.
next couple of weeks,
Well,
I
it's
might have a
always
little bit
really
more
nice
time.
meeting you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, that other stuff.
You get my-
I have to think about it for 2
this
weeks.
one here
I'll
at
call you
night.
back when I get back, December 3rd or, yeah, that
Maybe
way.
I'll see you on the 10th then anyway.
Yeah,
10th,
oh yeah,
Nancy.
Brenda.
Thanks.